Another episode of WaveTalkers Live. My name is Chris Mattia. My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. I'm joined today, as usual, by my esteemed colleagues, David W0DHG and Dan NR6V. Today is another one of our coffee bar episodes. We try to do these every quarter, maybe every 10 or so episodes. And this is basically a little micro help desk, if you will. So if you have a question that you would like to add into the queue for us to try and take on today, you can go to cq.wavetalkers.com/coffee bar. There's a really simple little form that you can go ahead and fill out, and we're all watching the questions that come into that submission form, and we'll throw this URL up periodically throughout the show, so you're all able to submit some questions, and we'll just work through as many of them as we can throughout the rest of the show. So as normal, we usually start off our shows with asking folks if you have access to WinLink to send us a WinLink check-in. Actually, let me pull the guys down here real quick and remove spotlight and remove spotlight. So it's a little bit easier to see what we're doing. Send us a WinLink check-in. Send it to all three of our call signs. That's W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical call sign of WaveTalkers. Use the standard WinLink check-in form, and in the comment section, let us know what topics you would like to learn about in 2023. 2022 is just about wrapped up, and we're looking at what kinds of activities and things to be able to do for next year. So please go ahead and let us know with that. Send us your check-in. And with that, let me just switch over to my PC and we'll walk through what a standard WinLink check-in kind of looks like if you are not familiar with it. Move myself down in the corner and move my microphone a little bit out of the way so it's not so much in the way here. Just go ahead and open up WinLink. It's always a good idea, especially when we do the show, so we do it once a week. Make sure you quit WinLink, launch it again, because when you launch WinLink from scratch, it will automatically check and see if there's a new update or a new version of WinLink, and some new features were just released this week. So you want to make sure you get the new copy, and you also get the new form. So that's a great little quick little tip for you to just make sure you're getting all that information. Then to send in your check-in, just go ahead and click the new message button. It's going to pop open like this. If you followed along last week, then you may have one of these little shortcuts. You can just click on that shortcut and it'll take you in. We'll go in through that because somebody asked a question about those later on in the show. But otherwise, just click the select template button, come up here, click the little plus sign next to the standard templates version. Look for the mapping GIS forms. Come on down a little bit further and you'll find the WinLink check-in.txt. Just go ahead and give that a double click. When you do, if the demo gods are with you, it should open up your web browser of choice. And it's got the standard check-in form that you've got here. You always want to make sure when you open this up, you click on that date and time so that it populates with the current date and time that's coming in from your computer. You just go ahead and say okay there. This is an exercise. You let us know the band and the mode you're connecting on. You followed along with last week's episode. We showed you how to create a shortcut that will list all of our call signs all in one short name. And so I've got that plugged in here for my system that is live, and that'll automatically plug everybody in here. You could fill in the rest of this information, and down here in the comment section, that's where you would go ahead and let us know what topics you would like to learn about in 2023. Go ahead and submit that form. When you do, it'll populate the information here in the message, and you just post that to the outbox, and then connect via whatever method that is appropriate for you at this time. For me, I'm going to just open a Telnet session, hit the start button, and let's see if we've got any check-ins coming in. And it looks like we certainly do have check-ins coming in from all over the world. So we'll check back in at the end of the show and see, we'll map all of the check-ins. So if you have access to WinLink, go ahead and do that throughout the show. In the meantime, let me jump back up over to here. bring that back up, and we'll bring the slides back up. So there's the topic, and here is that question submission form. It's at cq.wavetalkers.com/coffee bar. And we have gotten quite a few questions in already. So I'm going to go ahead and just let's just dive into the first one. This one came in from November 0 Delta Bravo Hotel. He asks, when will there be a macOS full featured version of WinLink other than Pat? I wish I had an answer for you for this. What I can say is that I have heard that the WinLink development team is working on some new projects that hopefully will expand beyond the current core framework that is out there to some more open and more flexible formats that hopefully we will get a full version coming up in the near future. But I have no information on when that is. If anyone is on the WinLink development team that would like to take on that at all, please just let us know. We can jump in with some more feedback on that. But unfortunately, we don't really have a good answer for you at this time. Right now, everything is just Windows only as far as the full featured version of WinLink. So once again, there is the question submission form, cq.wavetalkers.com/coffee bar. You just go ahead and add that into your web browser of choice, and it should get you over there. And I'm just going to do a quick check of the chat over here from the other platforms that we live stream to. So we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook as well. So if you have a question or want to add anything into the chat there, we should be able to see you there as well. All right, so let's go over to the next question. And this one came in from Logan KD6LLB. He says, I noticed in your last episode 50, that under the WinLink Express properties, auxiliary addresses, and tactical call signs, I have listed W6AH-3. Can you describe how we use W6AH-3 and W6AH-4? Great question. And that actually is a really sharp eye that you've got there. Let me switch back over to the walk-up. I'll pull the question off of screen, and let me see if we can go into seeing what you're referring to here. So the /3 or the -3 -4 is part of what we use for our digipeating. But inside of WinLink, you caught something that was set up in a very early episode. So if I come over here and I go to settings, WinLink Express setup, let me move down into the corner so I'm not blocking the screen there. And here under auxiliary call signs, tactical addresses, W6AH-3. So this was set up literally live during one of the shows. We had one of the members of the WinLink development team, and they walked us through a scenario where you may want to have an additional address that you're able to send traffic through. And this is one of your addresses, not necessarily a tactical call sign, but it is actually an auxiliary call sign. So let's say I wanted all of the WaveTalkers traffic. Instead of coming into my main inbox, I wanted all of that content to be segregated off inside of its own little section inside of WinLink. I could ask everybody to submit your forms to W6AH-3, and then all of those forms, all of those emails would go into one particular location that I would be able to work with. So this was literally just a demo that we were doing. However, I do use these /3s and /4s in a very different way. Let me show you how. Let me go ahead and close this setting there, and I'm going to come, thank you, Windows. I'm going to come over and I'm going to open Vara FM. And yes, just open it. Come on. Maybe in use by another application. Of course, there we go. Okay, so here's my Vara FM screen that I've got set up. And right now you are looking at my Microsoft Surface. You're looking at the portable WinLink station that I take with me wherever I go. If I'm out in the field, this is the station that I'm using. And so on my portable station, if I go up here to settings and I go to VARA setup, you'll see that my digipeater for this particular station is W6AH-3. And that is in contrast, let me see if I can make this work, to my gateway, which is here at my house. And if I come in my gateway up here to the settings and I go to VARA setup, you can see that my gateway, the digipeater, is set to W6AH-4. And that is by convention here in Ventura County, where I live and where I operate with the Ventura ACS and ARES group. And in Ventura County, we all set our digipeaters to be our call sign -4. And that comes out of the world of APRS as to what this is. So that way, all of us, when we're operating, we know if we're going to digipeat through another station, then we're going to digipeat through the -4. To keep the confusion down for me when I'm operating portable, then that's where I have my Surface. You're now on my Microsoft Surface. This is, again, my portable station. And so that's where I use the -3 for that. And so that's where the way that I'm using this setup, and it's just creating a little bit of separation so that I've got a particular machine. There's a lot of times when I'm doing testing where I want to see, okay, can I digipeat from here? If I'm checking Dan's gateway, then I'll connect my Surface to my ICOM 705, and I'll crank the power down to 1 watt or a half a watt. And I'll actually use RF to then try and do a digipeating connection. So I would do that by coming over here to the ping field, and I would just type in, so let's say I wanted to try and check on Dan's gateway, and I know Dan's gateway is NR6V-10 because that's his gateway. If we look it up in the list, that's what his gateway is. So in order for me to get to Dan, I would have to digipeat from my Microsoft Surface over to my gateway. So my Surface is -3, my gateway is -4, and I know in order for me to get over to where Dan is, I would have to go through another station, which happens to be W6RH, and his gateway, his digipeater, is -4. So I'm going from my Surface -3 to my W6AH-4. I then jump to Rob's gateway, W6RH-4, and then his gateway would then reach out to Dan, and it would follow that whole path. So it does require a little bit of trickery to kind of map these things out. And yeah, it could be a lot simpler if everybody just used their regular call sign as their digipeater. A lot of places that is the convention that's used. What we've found here in Ventura County is a lot of us have multiple different stations. And so creating this type of structure has been really beneficial to us for being able to check those things. So hopefully that starts to explain how we're using basically the -3, -4. It gives you other ways of leveraging your call sign for doing digital operations. In another episode, one of the other ways that we showed how you can use this setup is if I come over and I open up my browser and we go to PSK Reporter. Which is pskreporter.info. When it comes up, you can get to a map that's going to map out all of your connections, all of your call signs. If you go back and you look at the antenna height episode that we did, it was back in May of this current year. I don't recall the episode number, but in that we would send different volleys, different pings using FT8. And for each of those different pings with the antenna at different heights, we used my call sign W6AH. And then for the first one, we did -1. And so all of the traffic that showed up as W6AH /1 in this case, all of that traffic we could map on the screen. And then we would change the height of the antenna and change our FT8 call sign to /2 and come up here and do /2. And then it would map all of that. So we could then very quickly sort and see between different changes, different settings that we had of the antenna, see where all of that traffic was going. So it's a very powerful thing to be able to use because we all only get one call sign. Having multiple call signs, you can do that by using the /1, /2, or in WinLink, you use a dash instead of a slash. So hopefully that helps explain some of those things. Let's let me see, where do I want to go? I want to go back to here. Boop. Go back to, actually I could stay there. So once again, here's the question submission link, cq.wavetalkers.com/coffee-bar, and it will add it into our queue if you want to submit a question. The next question we have, this one came in, this has got a lot of stuff, and I'm going to bring all the guys back on so we can really talk about this one. So this one came in from K6ASA, and he says, I have an end-fed HF wire antenna that runs along the side of my house. It's roughly 12 to 20 feet high. When I transmit on HF frequencies, at times the arc fault device in my house panel will trip on the circuit where my TV, both DirecTV and your TV router, are located. It says, I've tried a choke between the antenna lead in coax and the HF radio, but still the breaker will occasionally trip. Do I need chokes for the power cords for each of the TV, DirecTV, TV router appliances? And that came in from K6ASA. That's a great question. So let me bring that back up and bring me back onto screen. I'm going to bring the guys up as well for this, because I think this is going to be, wait a minute, I got to click on the right, I got to have the right mouse. There we go. Ta-da. Add spotlight. And we'll bring Dan back up as well. So, not replace spotlight. Wrong button. Add spotlight. There we go. Okay. So, guys, if I understand this question correctly, we've got an end-fed wire that's running along parallel to the house with house wiring inside. So I'm definitely not an electrical engineer, but just from basic concepts, that's starting to sound a lot like a capacitor to me, where you've got one wire and you probably have another wire that's running parallel to that. And so when you're transmitting, not only are you generating this RF bubble that's going out into space for all of your contacts, but that those power cords inside of your house, it may just be the electrical circuits, probably are running fairly parallel to that antenna line, and you're getting electrical coupling between the two, and so you're getting these surges of power or some kind of power being induced in that circuit.
Is it happening on all bands or just one in particular?
Oh, that's a good question. Is let's see, if K6ASA, are you in here with us?
Yeah. While you're doing that, end-feds are known for putting RF back on the coax because they're only half of a dipole. That other half has to come someplace. So you've done the right thing by putting a choke. I assume it's a common mode choke on there. I think they recommend that you put it at the antenna end rather than the radio end. Mm-hmm. But good grounding is critical, and running a counterpoise might help as well. But it sounds like that's, especially if it's happening on all bands. I know on mine, I have an off center fed at home, and I had a lot of trouble with RF on the coax. Worked it out with a good choke, but I still, when I transmit on 10 meters in that area, it doesn't shut off the GFCI, but I do get a kind of a buzz through the speakers of my audio video amplifier. Steve Waterman says counterpoise 80%, ground 20% for non-resonant end feds.
Yeah, certainly adding a counterpoise would probably help. I have run into a similar kind of thing with some devices, and I've done the little snap-on ferrite beads onto some of the devices in the house when I do find one that really is causing a lot of issues. I had a neighbor who when I would transmit specifically on 17 meters, suddenly my voice would come out of his entire stereo system pretty much everywhere. And doing some research on that particular piece of equipment, we started finding tech documents. It was an older piece of equipment, about a couple decades old. And we started finding some help desk information that suggested that that specific equipment was not properly shielded at certain HF frequencies. And when we did a lot more testing on it, we found out that, yeah, pretty much if I transmitted at 18.157.5, I could come out of his stereo system consistently. And for that, we ended up working with the manufacturer and speaking with them and letting them know about the issue that was going on. We even found some old postings from the CEO of their company that identified this problem. Those had been pulled down, but it was still on the Internet Wayback Machine. And they ended up sending a whole new stereo system to my neighbor, which was pretty cool. They sent him a new thing, and that definitely took care of that problem that was there. I see we've got some other comments on here about line filters on the coax to stop the skin effect. Wrap them around an oatmeal container. So that would be making an RF choke out of your coax line, taking and putting a couple of turns of that to keep it tightly grouped together. That may help for some of that. It might help to put the ferrites and or a toroid on your different devices. So for instance, let me see if I've got one here. Yeah, I do. So for my my ICOM 7300 and for my ICOM 705, I notice I periodically get lots of RF issues on my USB cable. So if I go bring this up, make sure I've got the right thing showing on screen, which would be this camera. Let me bring myself down in the corner. So I take and I pick up some of these. This is a 240.40/43 toroid. You can pick these up on Amazon. They're only about $10 or $15. They're actually not that expensive, and they work pretty good. There's a link in the holiday guide to this. So if you go onto WaveTalkers, you can find that. And this works really well. Just put some turns of the cable through it, and it does block that additional common mode, and it cuts it off from being an antenna into your device. So this has been very helpful for me in some situations as well. Dan, David, any thoughts from you on this problem?
Well, I think Dan asked the right question, which is it happening on only some frequencies and not others? But yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to go one little bit at a time. I know other hams that have ferrites on almost everything in their shack, and then other equipment too. And that might be a way to solve it. Just depends on what's happening and when it's happening.
I put a link in the chat to Palomar Engineers in Southern California. They're really good, and they have a website with a lot of really good information on RF issues. So it might be a good place to start. I used their choke on my off-center fed, and it made a huge difference in my issues. Basically took HF from being unusable to being pretty damn good.
Yeah. I've also noticed, so I have I've been testing a lot of different antennas, and I've got a Chameleon LEFS, which is an end-fed wire. And a lot of times for a lot of the wire antennas I've been testing, I'll put a mast in my front yard and a mast in the backyard, and I'll run the wire over the house so that I've got enough distance on the short lot that we have here in Ventura. And what I've noticed there is when I run a long wire over that section of the house, I always have interference on 20 meters right around the 14.250 to 14.260. So there's something in my house that's probably right around that location that if I put up a vertical, if I put up a loop, if I put up the buddy hex out in the front yard or a dipole out in the front yard where it's not running over the house, then I stop getting all of that interference. So some of this can also be if you can change the orientation of the antenna a little bit, or adding some chokes onto some of the offending equipment, that oftentimes can help.
Yeah, apparently Dave N8 lost his call here. N8SBE said that ARRL has an article specifically about GFCIs that are really sensitive to RF. So apparently there are some that are known to be causing a problem. And I posted the link to that article also. So it might be where you might be better off just changing out your GFCI to one that's known to not be a problem. They do list some in that article.
Right. So I see K6ASA. He is here in the chat, and he says the interference was only on 40 meters. Which is interesting. 40 meters for me is also a very difficult band. I have high power lines that run not far from my house, and 40 meters is always a mess for me as far as interference that I pick up. I'm always trying to deal with that on that specific band with most antennas. And it's most notable when I use the loop antennas. If I have the loop parallel to the direction of the power line, so that the null is going where the power lines are, I don't get any of the interference. But as soon as I rotate the loop around it all, so the loop is in the direction of where those power lines are, I get awful RFI interference. Scott says he did see the article on the GFCIs and his breaker was not on the list. So there we go. Any other thoughts on this one before we move on to what the next question is? All right, let's jump over to the next one. Here's again the question submission form, which is cq.wavetalkers.com/coffeebar. And there you go. And I see there's also some comments coming in on YouTube. Oh, hey, good evening, Lionel. Excellent. And let's see, what's the next one that's up here? So the next question is, can you go over any rules or guidance or conventions and or recommendations for selecting frequencies for peer-to-peer connections? So this is, the question was ideally targeted at HF. and all of the different bands. And when you go in to set up a connection on HF, you've got to select a frequency. And he had listed a whole bunch of frequencies that were on here. So for instance, on 80 meters, what about a center frequency of 3.586 with a dial frequency of this, that, or the other? Any kind of general conventions. If a particular frequency is busy, how much do you move up or down the band to try and find an open frequency? Either of you guys want to start chatting about this at all?
No, I'll leave that for you HF guys.
The HF guys. Okay. So the way that I've typically gone about dealing with this is I'll oftentimes open up in WinLink. I'll update the propagation table so I know where the gateways are physically located at. And usually the area of the band where you're at for a particular band. Let me see if I can bring this up. I actually need to give me a second to plug in my radio so that the HF stuff will load properly. So this will just take me just a second here to plug in. One of the joys of WinLink is it really is much happier if you have a radio plugged in to be able to get VARA and all of these HF stuff to load. So there we go. And we'll turn the radio on and change that. Come over to the walk up. Move myself into the corner. And Dave, can you unpin you and Dan? Okay, so here I've got WinLink opened up, and let's say I was going to try and do a peer-to-peer session inside of VARA HF. So I've got my radio on. I'll come over here. I'll click the drop down for VARA HF. And I'll start on the general session where all of the gateways are located. Come over and open the session up. And if the demo gods are with me, it should open up my copy of VARA and run all of the updates. And of course, it's complaining about COM port 7. Oh, because it's set for my 7300. Of course it is. So you would come up to the channel selection. And if you haven't recomputed the table, it's going to pop up and say, hey, do you want to recompute the table? Yeah, go ahead and recompute that and let it calculate out where all of the stations are at that point. Now, what this table is actually doing is it's a propagation table that's coming from Voice of America databases in order to come up with what's the likely propagation best fits from where you're located, and it knows where you're located from the middle of your grid square that you plugged in when you registered WinLink, and it's calculating out what the probability you likely will be able to reach another station. So let's say I wanted to try and make a connection on 40 meters. I can see that there's a lot of stations that are here right inside of 40 meters. And so one of the ways that I could do this would be simply take a couple of those stations and kind of like click on them and go into where they're at. But what I like to do is I like to go in and actually sort by the frequency to kind of figure out where many of these are located. And you can do that by clicking on the heading here. And I'll just click on the, of course, it's not doing it for me. There's the path reliability, channel selection. Let's go back to it. Come on. Yes, I know, failure to connect. So if you click on the frequency heading here, it's going to sort the list by the frequencies. Then I'll look down and I'll try and find a grouping where I start to see where the green ones are. And you can also kind of look and you can say, okay, 71350. So you can start to see kind of where those stations are located by sorting it by the frequency. And then as you scroll around, you can also start to see where some of the ones that are likely to be green. So a lot of these are in one particular area. There's a lot of them here at 71103. If you think about how wide your signal is, then generally, if you're able to move by about 3 kilohertz, you're generally pretty good to be able to go up or down. You want to check your band plan and make sure that you are still within band for where you're at. But this is generally what I go through and I do. I'll look and see kind of where the other gateways are, because I don't want to interfere with those gateways. I can look at the path reliability. Come on. And if you click on one of these headings, it'll sort by that. If you click on it again, it'll reverse sort by that heading. So in this case, it puts all of the high numbers up here at the top. So in this case, I could look at 7130600, open that frequency up on my radio, and then kind of watch your waterfall or listen around, go back and forth, go to a spot where you don't have any other traffic that's going on there, and use it. There's not, in amateur radio, there's no hard frequencies that are set for priority for where you're at. If you're using shares or some other or some other system, then you have some other set frequency ranges that you're going to be operating in. But overall, what you're looking for is an open section on the band where you can send that digital traffic where it's still within band. Hopefully that helps with that. Any other thoughts on that from Dan, David, or Steve in the background? I know Steve is in there as well. Oh, and I see Carolyn, K6COB just got your extra. Congratulations on that. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add.
You don't have anything to add? Okay.
No, you covered it. I hope.
All right. Back up to here. Switch back to that. Go to their question submission, cq.wavetalkers.com/coffee bar. And the next question, this came in from K7HUH. They ask, how do you add and or remove a template shortcut tab? A template shortcut tab. So that, if I'm understanding what the question is, let me put myself back down here. We'll go back over to the walk up and take off the question. Close those windows. So when you open up a new message, these are the shortcut tabs that are up here for the message. So we stepped through this process in the last episode. And what these allow you to do is, instead of having to go through that process like we did at the beginning of the show, where you do select a template and you click the little drill down and you go down to the general forms and you find your WinLink check-in.txt and you open that up, instead of going through all of those different steps, you can create these shortcut tabs that appear for your copy of WinLink. And so here I've got one for WaveTalkers. I can just click on that and it automatically opens my web browser. It opens up the correct form for me, and it allows me to step through the process of filling out that form. And so if there are common forms that you find you are always using, this is a really good thing to do. There's also you can load check-in data. So if you save at the bottom of the form, if you fill out all of the base information, there's a checkbox right down here that says save check-in data, that if you fill in all of the basic common information for yourself, save that out to a file, you can quickly load that information as well. We'll step through that here in just a few minutes, but I want to address this question of these shortcuts that are in here. So I'm going to close that. And in order to get these up here, I'm going to close this particular message as well. Come up here. I believe it's under the message window. So you go up to the main WinLink window, go up to message, and come down to set favorite templates right there, set favorite templates. Go ahead and click on that. And what it'll do is you can save up to 4 favorite templates that you have. You give that template a name. So in this case, I've named mine WaveTalkers, and I have you just hit the browse button and you navigate to one of the particular templates. So let's say I operate with the LAX group of Aries operators, and we support hospitals. And so we have a hospital submission form that we need to update all the time. And so I'd like a way to be able to get to that form very quickly. So I'm going to come down here to favorite template number 3, and I'm going to call it my hospital form. Oh, because I hit caps lock. There we go. And for file name, you come down here, you hit the browse button, and it opens up your template manager. So from here, you just go ahead and you just navigate to the template that you want to save. So I'm going to open this one up. I'm going to open up the standard templates, and I'll go into the California state forms. I'll go into the LA County forms, and then LA County has a bed availability report, or an HSA report. This is one we use all the time when we're supporting the hospital. So it's one that I want to make sure I can quickly get to. I don't want to have to remember all of this path that's here. So I'll just select the hospital LAX bed availability report, the HSA. I'll give it a double click, and it's going to add that right here into my favorite templates. And then I will go ahead and click save. Now, when I open up a new mail message, here at the top, I've got the hospital link, and I can just click on that. And what it does is it opens up that particular template for me with just a single click. I don't have to step through that whole process of opening the templates, navigating through all of those screens, and then getting back to it. Let's say you don't want this, or suddenly, you know what, having the hospital form, that's not very helpful. I need to call it the HSA form. So I can close this template, close the message. I'm going to go back over here to message. I'm going to come right back here to set favorite template, open that up, and now I can change this from hospital. I can call it the HSA report and just hit save. Now when I open a new message, there it's called the HSA. I can open it. It still is opening the same form. If I decide I don't want this form anymore, not a problem. Come back over, go right back into message, set favorite templates, and we can just delete this line. So I'm just going to delete the name for it, and I will delete all of the information in this search field. Now there's nothing there. When I hit save and I go back and I open the message up, that heading is away from there. So there you're able to save that shortcut or that favorite to a particular template. You're able to edit the name of it so it's something that makes sense to you, and you're able to go ahead and delete that if you would like to delete it. And I see Midget asked, how do we remove that? Any other questions related to that favorite template section? I guess since we're here inside of the playing with the templates, one of the other things that we could look at, one of the templates that I use on a very regular basis is the Ventura County check-in template. So if I open up a new message, you can see one of the forms that I have here is Ventura ACS ARES. It's a regular check-in, but let me show you where I get to that if I just manually kind of dial into that. So I can go over here and I can click the select template, and instead of in my standard templates, the standard templates are the ones that come in as part of WinLink itself. You don't want to change or mess with your standard templates, because every time you run an update of WinLink, WinLink will check and see, hey, are there any new updates to the standard templates? And it's going to push those in for you. But for my local nets, for the local organization that I work with, we use a custom template for checking in to our nets. And so I've loaded that into my global templates, meaning any operator who sits down at my PC and was operating would have access to these. If I had them only in my W6AH templates folder, then only when I'm logged into WinLink here on this computer would that template be available to me. But here it's in the global templates, and this one's called the ACS check-in. I can just double click it, and it opens up a custom form. And you can see we've added in this custom form, it's pretty much the exact same form as the standard check-in, but we've added a couple of other data fields in here. We just went in and edited that and added those in here, so those form data are available. Now, how would I load this? How would you load something like this? Well, in order to get to, say, this particular form, you would go to our website, and the operator would download a copy of that form. And there's a set of instructions, and the instructions say that what you want to do in order to create something in that global templates folder, what you do is you open up your Windows Explorer, you navigate to your RMS Express folder, and this is where your copy of WinLink is installed. Usually it's right at the root of your C drive. And what you're looking for is the global folders. Just go ahead and go into the global folders, and then inside of there, there's a folder for templates. Go ahead and double click on templates, and this is where you load the custom form that you've downloaded. And so for the Ventura ACS check-in, it's actually a couple of different files. It all comes together as a little zip file. You just copy all of those into that location. And then when you launch WinLink the next time and you open up a new message, you go and you browse your selected templates inside of the global templates folder, you would see that new custom form that's available to you to be able to do that. So hopefully that that helps with those items. And do we have any of you guys want to add anything to that, David or Dan?
I just posted a link in chat to the little video I did on installing non-standard templates. So
Oh, right. Yeah. So
that's in the chat.
That's in the chat. So if you're not inside of the Zoom, then if you want to get to that, you can go to WaveTalkers.com. And if you go over to the resources section of WaveTalkers.com, there is a link for WinLink in the digital operations. And if you scroll down just a little bit in there, there is in these little blue bars, non-standard templates. You can go ahead and click on that. And here's a video that Dan made about going on and finding custom templates on winlink.org, I believe, right, Dan? Yeah, you go into winlink.org to find the templates, and he walks you through step by step what you need to do to be able to install those. So that is up there. And there's, by the way, if you haven't been to this page, this is when we created back when we started all of this. There is a whole bunch of little short videos that are on here for helping you get started with setting up WinLink, kind of what it is. And these are all real short videos that you can go in and you can watch, and it'll step you through the process of getting yourself set up on WinLink, figuring out the signal link and how to configure. We've got several videos that are in here on the signal link, and you just click on the little subtopic that's in here, and there's a bunch of these little short videos, and we'll walk you through all those steps.
Yeah, as for the non-standard forms, there are a number of forms that either have been pulled out of the standard forms because they're lesser used, or maybe more local or regionally used. And those have been pulled out of the standard forms pack to keep the number of forms manageable. But they are available on the WinLink website, and it's real easy to download them. You can install them into your global file or the file with your call sign name on it. quite easy to do.
All right. Let's go on to the next question. So all of these new questions are all ones that have come in since we started. So I don't have slides for these, and we don't have a graphics department that's in the background like plugging all this stuff in. So those were all questions that all came in earlier. So the next one, this one comes in from KI0KY, and asks, will VARA AC chat pass through VARA FM digipeaters? Wow, that's a great question.
I don't know why it wouldn't.
So I think VARA AC has stated that they were going to support FM, but I'm not sure that they're up and running with that yet. I think mostly it's still HF.
I think the latest version does work.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, we need to play with it, but
Yep.
So if you're not familiar, let me minimize a few of these things. And I haven't installed the latest update to VAR AC. I'm looking for its icon here on my horribly confusing desktop that I have. You can tell I'm a Mac user because all of this stuff would be in a whole other place. I don't see it. Let's see if I can do. Oh, there it is. VAR AC. It's right on VAR AC. So if you're not familiar with this program, come on, where's the rest of it? There it is. VAR AC is it's a keyboard to keyboard chat tool that is getting a lot of development. This is a wickedly cool application. It's something we've been doing a lot of testing with in order to try and do some upcoming deep dive episodes into. Although we keep getting sidetracked with a lot of other projects in the background as we're learning this. But what VAR AC essentially allows you to be able to do is it uses the VARA protocols in order to set up keyboard to keyboard chats. You can also pass files back and forth and so forth. So it's all built on top of using VARA. And if you think about the way that FT8 works, where you have these very short prescribed messages that are going back and forth between different operators sharing a common space, VARA AC works pretty similar to that, except for it allows you to really do a lot more keyboard to keyboard typing as opposed to just the prescribed kind of communication. So it's a very effective tool for being able to use. And we've done some talking about this in the past as one of the things that you can do with this when it's fully set up. And I'm not configured for being able to do a live demo of this. So it's not something that we had kind of prepped for doing. But you can set up a ping to be able to have that ping go out, and then anybody else who's using VARA ACs, their system can respond back and say, hey, yeah, I'm hearing you. You can then map that onto, if you move this over, you can see there's a link over here for PSK Reporter map. So you can hit that and you can actually see on a map where your VARA pings are going out, where they're being heard, who you likely are able to communicate with. All of those things become super helpful. As far as can you use digipeaters to send this traffic through? That is a great question. If someone in the chat, in any of the audiences, whether or not you're on in our Zoom or you're on one of the other channels that we're broadcasting on right now. So YouTube, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/WaveTalkers, our Facebook page, or on our LinkedIn page, or on WaveTalkers itself. Go ahead and let us know in the chat if you know the answer to that. That's not one that we necessarily have. So
we should play with that, see if it works.
We definitely gotta play with this a lot more and make sure that Vara AC gets its full due, because there is a lot of really cool things that you can do.
Yeah.
With,
Well, the ability to send files is pretty big, and they definitely have an MCOM orientation.
yes. So if you've used Bar AC in an MCOM setup, let us know also. We'd love to know more about the way that you are using VAR AC, what some of your successes are, what some of your challenges have been as you've been using it, so we can give the subject a lot more information to it. Next one, Terry asks, what is a minimum in tools that you take into the field with you? I did a POTA activation yesterday, had a coax fitting fail. Luckily, I had my full toolkit with a new PL259 and a soldering iron. I had left my crimp connectors at home. So what is what's kind of the, I guess we could think of this in terms of what's the minimum toolkit that we take into the field with us. When I'm going and doing a POTA activation, or I'm just going to set up some time to do some portable operating, I will typically not bring all of my tools with me. I won't bring my soldering iron. I won't bring all kinds of crimp connectors. I will, if you watch the videos that we just posted up on our YouTube channel this week, we posted a whole series of them on portable WinLink, and I unpacked the kit that I oftentimes take with me. It's the very first episode, which was the gear episode, and I unpacked my backpack. In there, you can see the levels of redundancy that I'm bringing with me. Usually, what I'll bring is I'll bring a couple of short lengths of coax, and I'll have several different adapters attached to those, so I can make some different adaptations. I'll oftentimes bring, here's the kit that I have. Let me try and do this without spilling my coffee everywhere. And let's see, let's change over to this input. Move myself down into the corner. So this is the bag that I'm bringing out with me now a lot of times, and these come in a 4-pack on Amazon, and they come in different sizes. So this is the largest of the sizes, and this is the one that fits my ICOM 705, the tuner. It'll put the 12 amp hour battery in here, and then lots of cables and adjustments and things. One of the things that I definitely have with me up here in this top pocket is a collection of all of these little adapters that I have. And so I think about the radio that I have, what are the different components that I'm likely to be able to need. I'll bring a couple of different kinds of coax couplers. So if you watch that series that we just did, one of the things that you'll notice when I deployed the LEFS antenna, I deployed the NFED antenna, I only had a little short, like 10-foot piece of or 25-foot piece of coax with me. So in order to make it so that I could really deploy that antenna, what I ended up doing was I used the length of coax that normally would go between my 705 and my tuner, and just added that in by using some of the little adapters that I had with me, in order to extend that length of coax. I don't really bring a whole lot of the tools for doing a field repair if I'm going to do a POTA activation. If I'm going to go do a deployment, that's a different bag that I'll oftentimes bring, and there I will bring soldering iron and crimpers and power pole making tools and so forth. I'll bring all of that type of equipment with me if I'm going to do like the Baker to Vegas, or I'm going to do a field deployment. That's a different setup where I'm working with other people. If I'm just going out and doing a POTA activation, I'll oftentimes bring a couple of different antennas with me. So a lot of times I'll bring, as you saw in that video, if you watched it on our YouTube channel, I'll bring, usually inside of these kits, I have one of the AX1 antenna from Elecraft, so it's super small and it'll get me on a couple of different bands. I'll usually bring like the LEFS because it's very small, it's easy to deploy. A lot of times I'll bring either the Buddy Stick Pro or I'll bring the F-Loop 3.0. So I'll have a very small freestanding antenna system that I can operate with. And it really depends on kind of where I'm going to go, where I'm going to set up and operate at. A lot lately, one of the places that's become one of my favorite little go-to spots to go set up and test antennas at is I go down to the Ventura Pier that's here at the waterfront, and I'll hike out to the end of the pier, and it works out really well because I'm about 25 or 30 feet over the water, over top of the ocean seawater, up on the pier. And as long as I'm using a freestanding antenna, such as the F-Loop or the Buddy Stick Pro, I can set up a pretty small antenna system, and I already have that antenna system elevated over the seawater. I'm getting that amplification pretty well, and it is a lot of fun to be able to set up out there and be able to operate. So it really depends. That's the kinds of things that I bring with me. What about you guys, Dan or David? What are you bringing with you when you're going portable? What kind of tools, what kind of gear are you bringing?
You want to jump in, Dan, or
Yeah, I have a backpack that I leave in my truck that's got all kinds of adapters, just a little bit of everything, other than tools. And then I have a tool bag that I'm building that's got things like a butane soldering iron, wire cutters, little screwdrivers, a little small multimeter, nut drivers, things like that. So that's always with me. I don't necessarily take it with me beyond my truck, but at least it's as close as my truck. But it's a work in progress for sure.
What do you carry as your kind of everyday carry tools that you have with me? I know for me, I usually have a Leatherman with me. I have a simple blade, and that's and on my, which I don't have it on me, on my keychain, I have the one Allen wrench that works most all of the gear that operates. And so that's pretty much the toolkit that I have, because it has, pliers and screwdrivers and so forth to be able to do a lot of the common stuff. One of the most common field repairs that I've had to make when I'm out operating portable, if I'm using my buddy pole system, they use those little tiny banana plugs to connect the coax feed line into the Versatee. And a lot of times over time, that banana feed plug connection will get squished down, so it's not a good solid connection. And my SWR, everything will go kind of crazy. If you just go over and you unplug that, you take your little Leatherman and just give that little banana plug a little bit of a squeeze. It'll spread out that connector and go back in and lock it in. Those are the types of things that I'm most often doing. David, what else? Okay.
I carry these three things in my keys, obviously a Phillips and a blade screwdriver. This little tool is pretty cool. It basically is a gradually decreasing loop that you can use for multiple size nuts. We were actually up on top of City Hall East installing some mesh equipment, and we found out that one of our antennas up there, the coax had come loose, but in order to get to the coax connector, we had to remove a hex nut from the sleeve. And we're all looking around because we didn't come prepared to do that. And sure enough, this little device worked, and we were able to use it to get the coax replaced or reseated. The only other thing I carry is I carry a pocket knife.
Yeah, and my everyday carry includes a pocket knife, a flashlight, and a Leatherman. But I think as far as, my preparation for field deploying is, unless it's an emergency, I'll never deploy with a kit that I haven't set up in the front yard and tested out 100%. And then that way I know, hey, I'm not missing this connector or that connector. And I know it's extra work, and I know it's a pain in the butt, but it allows me to have the confidence that wherever I'm going to go, I'm going to have everything that I need. And I've learned this over time. Like, I can remember I went and did had a backpack trip with a scout troop, and we were going to do soda on Mount Baden-Powell, the highest peak in Southern California. It's like 10,000 feet, and got there, and I was missing the SMA female to BNC connector that I needed to plug in the log periodic antenna I had brought, hoping to get some extra distance out of it. And without that connector, there wasn't anything I can do other than hold the HT high above my head. And I was actually surprised. I mapped later on. I made several contacts at 75 miles with an HT with a rubber duck because of the elevation. But I had hoped to be able to go even further and get better coverage. And it is really worth your time, especially if it's an MCOM kind of situation, to get the gear out, set it all up on a regular basis, test it all out, plug it all in, make sure you can do voice and data and whatever other functions that you want to do with it. Because when you get on the field, there is no Home Depot. A lot of times, there is no more Radio Shack most places. And yeah, I probably could have cut the ends off of the antenna I had or the coax I had, and kind of faked it in there, but I didn't do it and learned a lesson.
One of the cables that I oftentimes have with me, I usually do have a little small bag of power cables. And if you've watched any of the episodes where we unpack any of the solar power kits or the cable kits that we've done, I'll oftentimes have power poles to alligator clips on a short little piece of adapter wire. And I'll usually have at least two of those for two different styles of alligator clips, ones that are really small and ones that are a little bit bigger. And it's remarkable how many things you can fix with just those two, because you can take the power poles and you can plug them together, and now you've got alligator clips on both lines, and you've got two wires that you can attach and basically create little jumpers. So you can, if you really think about the way that your radio works, the way that the coax works. I also have some that are little, power poles to banana plugs. So you could take a power pole to banana plug and you could stick it into an SO239 to access that center pin, and then know that cable now is your center conductor. Clip it onto something else that's going to be your antenna or another wire. So you've been able to spread that out. You can then take another like alligator clip it to the shield or the outside of the connector, and then connect it to some other kind of ground. So the biggest thing is be familiar with your gear and try different things. If you watched those episodes that we just did about portable WinLink in episode 2, as I'm unpacking and setting up my station, you can see that I forgot the little tripod adapter, and that tripod ended up being not useful to me. So have enough gear with you that you've got some flexibility. And when you find that piece that's broken or that's not working right, think about what is the actual function it's doing. Can you modify something else in some other way that's obviously not going to destroy your gear in the process? So as David was mentioning, cutting a piece of coax, yeah, if you're in a dire situation, you can do that. You can make that extra connection. But a lot of times you can do that in some other kind of way. Another question that came in, Carolyn, K6COB /AE. Love that. Congratulations on getting your amateur extra. Carolyn asks, what kind of antenna can I safely use in a second floor apartment to run an HF radio? No balcony. A power line runs parallel to the side of the building where I'm situated. My suggestion for a complete indoor HF antenna that could be run would probably be to use a mag loop. I have tried this at my own house, and I love my mag loop. It works really, really good. However, it doesn't work inside of my house because my house is stucco on the outside, which means it's got a chicken wire mesh underneath of that stucco, which kind of makes a little bit of a Faraday cage. So you'll have to do some testing to see if you're actually getting signal out of your apartment or not. A colleague that I've worked with quite a bit, kilo number 4, Mike X-Ray Zulu. His name's Walter. He lives in the Atlanta area, and he has a small apartment, and he uses a mag loop antenna inside of his house, and he's making DX contacts from a mag loop in his house using QRP power in Europe, in South America, all over North America. So it definitely can be done. That's probably the smallest footprint freestanding antenna that you can get to do HF operation. Pretty much everything else is going to be pretty tricky to be able to do. Although I have seen some people who will take a wire and they'll run it around the ceiling of their apartment or something like that. When I was in Los Angeles, I actually ran a full-size G5 RV on the roof of the house where we were staying. It was a little teeny tiny apartment. And I went up there and I had the G5 RV. So the feed point was at one end of the roof and it came back to the other side and then went back. And so it made this kind of like W shape. And it was flat. So it was only just like maybe 3-4 feet above the roof. And it was a horizontal and it was all folded up. Did it work great? No. Did I make contacts on it? Was I able to talk to Alaska and all the way across the US and NVIS communication and have communications all over California with it? Yes, it totally worked. The trick that I found when I was in that situation, I started by spending more time doing digital modes like FT8, and I got much better at operating in those formats because of the living conditions that I had. And then I would go do voice and other types of HF in a portable setup. And so that's how I ended up making the transition from doing HF in a very compromised antenna situation to going and spending a lot more time doing HF portable. And that's how I was able to do it. What other thoughts do you guys have for Carolyn for HF antennas, either inside or in a small space?
Yeah, I think the mag loop's a good suggestion. There's not really an ideal situation, and you have to be real careful about RF exposure, especially if you're running 100 watts or more. I'd be very careful about that. But I think the mag loop, Carolyn had noted that she had to go to another meeting, so she's not here, but we can maybe connect with her offline since she's local.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris, Rudy, KN6SXB asked a question. Just so happens that I recently addressed that. He's looking for a way to raise his N9TAX where no tree limbs are available. And I just bought this. It's a carbon fiber fishing rod, and I think it's 24 feet, cost about $40. And you can get different kinds of mounts that the fishing rod slips into, but they're carbon fiber. They're very strong. And so that would be a good solution for getting that up in the air when you don't have really any kind of infrastructure to hook it to.
A crappie pole.
It's a crappie pole.
I've seen guys make dipoles and square like muxons with those.
Yeah, I mean here it is in its stored form, so you can see it's very small.
You're still seeing
you got to stop sharing.
Sorry. There we go. So
that the whole thing?
That's the whole thing. It just goes out in telescoping sections, very light, but really strong. So that's a good solution for getting something like an N9TAX up without trees or poles or whatever.
I'm trying to find the picture of the solution that I use, because I use the N9TAX really often. I use it a whole lot. And what I've been doing, let me bring myself back up to screen. What I've been doing is I went down to the hardware store and I got go to the plumbing aisle where all of the PVC connectors are and hang around there, because that is a super cool place to be able to find all kinds of solutions for doing all of these types of things. So what I found is that if I use the 1-inch PVC plumbing, the 1-inch inner diameter is large enough so that on my buddy pole, just standard mast, if you take the little top connector off, which uses a little tiny Allen wrench, you can take the little top connector off, which screws into the Versa-T. Then that top section of mast, a piece of PVC connector will slide over that. And if you look in the aisle where all of those PVC connectors are, you'll oftentimes find a 4-way connector. It looks like just a little cross, and it's for connecting, plumbing from 4 different angles. That will actually slip directly over the top of your buddy pole mast and over the top of a lot of other different little small portable masts that you have. And then you have 2 pieces that go out from there where you've got couplers. You can also do this with just a regular T connector, so you can slide the open section of the T over, and you've got one port that's going off to the side. Then what I usually do is I'll take a short piece of maybe 1 or 2 foot PVC, literally just dry fit it into there. You don't have to glue this in or anything like that. David's got he's got his up on screen. Let me add a spotlight for him. And so I'll have just a little tiny section of PVC that comes out from that. And then a lot of times I'll put another just T fitting on the end that's sticking out. And you can dry fit all of these pieces together. By adding another T fitting off to the end, you can see how David has that little yellow kind of green line attached to through the loop of his PVC there. That then I just use as a place to be able to hoist my N9TAX up. And by creating this little arm essentially that sticks out from the mast, it keeps your antenna from being right up against an aluminum mast where you're going to get that RF coupling directly to it. So by moving that over just a little bit, just adding just a little bit of space over, you'll oftentimes get a lot better transmission. So when I do a lot of the events here in Ventura County, if we do support for one of the marathons or something, I'll oftentimes take one of the small buddy pole masts, set that up, put this little 4-way connector on it, put the little side arm that comes off of it, and then just hoist the N9TAX up that. And all you do is you just need to get it up just a little tiny bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, so here's the pro tip on that. Don't do what Chris did and take the connector off of this with the hex key that goes right in there. If you go to the same plumbing aisle, a 1/2-inch threaded connector actually screws right on top of the part that's already mounted there. Very perfectly, because that's what they use.
Right.
And then I do this, and like Chris said, you could put arms off here. Basically, this is what I use to put up the tactical J-pole, the 2 metal arms. And the only thing I have the rope here for is I thread it through the bolts with a little loop, and it's a safety thing. So in case it gets windy or it falls off, this will hold it on there. You could do it either way.
Yeah. Other things that I've used with the N9TAX that I have, because I do a lot of filming, I have C stands, I have light stands. I'll oftentimes use that because it doesn't have to be super high to be able to work. I'll oftentimes just like put some kind of a little oftentimes I'll use gaff tape to be able to do it. Or off the top of my N9 TAX, I have some of those Velcro one wraps, and I also have a little small like keyring style carabiner that I attach into the top of it, and so then I can use that to clip on a line, clip on, whatever you need to, use a little Velcro to tie it onto something. Any of those kinds of things work. Just get creative with it. Any other thoughts on that?
Nope, I think it covers it.
All right. That brings us to the end of the questions that we have listed there. Let me switch over to the computer and thing and just go down to the corner. Let's do another check of the check-ins and see if any other check-ins have come in, and we'll bring up the map and map out and see where everybody is this week. So in order to do that, I'm just going to come up here. I'm going to click on the little globe icon, make sure I've got it selected on the WinLink check-in. The map is set to Google. I'll display that map. And this is looking like the map of the world. We're already zoomed out to this location. And looks like down here in New Zealand, we've got Terry joining us. Hey, thanks for joining us down there in ZL land. Let me pull David off so it's a little bit easier to see the overall map. We've got several stations who have checked in here in the Philippines. Let me go ahead and zoom into that area so it's a little bit easier to see where all those stations are, because I know there's a couple of them down in there. Zoom in a few more times. And yeah, there's a few stations over here. DU3 GKT DW1RF and looks like DW1OTT. Hey, thanks for joining us there from the Philippines. Great to see all the operators over there who are getting your WinLink stations up and running, and all of the gateways that you guys have been putting together. That's really awesome stuff. We'll come over here to Europe. We've got Roland joining us, DG1GHR. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll scroll over here to North America and zoom in just a little bit, see where folks are coming in. We've got our friend up here in Bangor, WA1URS, joining us. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us up there. Folks down here in the Carolinas and looks like Kentucky area, Tennessee. There's Steve joining us, coming in with his shares call sign. Very cool that you're able to send traffic between both shares and amateur radio using WinLink to be able to do that. Always fun to be able to see that. Stations down in Florida, Texas, joining us, John and King over there in Texas. Some more stations up here in the upper Midwest, here in the Michigan area, Ohio, South Dakota, joining us in stations in Colorado, Idaho, up here in the Pacific Northwest in Washington, and then all over California and the Southwest here. We've got stations that are joining us in there and checking in. It is great to see all of those contacts that are coming in. Let's zoom in on Southern California a little bit and see a few more of those where they're coming in. So hopefully everyone has seen their check-in come in on the map, so you can see that your check-in was received and it did come in. There we go for all of those. There's Carolyn K6COB/AE joining us once again. Congratulations on upgrading to your amateur extra. With that, let me bring myself back up here. We'll bring the guys back up and go around for any closing thoughts before we wrap all of this stuff up. There's David. David, any closing thoughts from you today on this next call?
It's always about, test your gear, play with it, get it out before you take it out in the field, set it up, test it out. And if you need help, let us know. We're here for you. That's what the coffee bars are about, and happy to be of service.
If you guys use the coffee bar, the coffee bar link that's here, this page is open all the time. And so we do, every time we do one of these episodes, this is still the same list. So in between the coffee bar episodes, if you do think of a question or something that you'd like us to address, we do check in on that on a pretty regular basis. So you're always able to go and do that. Dan, NR6V, any closing thoughts from you today?
Not really. Hopefully we solved a few issues for folks, and I find that I learn more from not only answering, but hearing answers to other folks' problems. It clues me into something I've been thinking about and maybe didn't ask. So hopefully we did that for some folks today.
And I see we did have a few other questions, and a lot of those came in as topic ideas that folks would like us to talk about. So more information about setting up HF gateways, more information about FL Digi, and so forth. Questions about how many people are actually listening. It's a hard thing to gauge for all of the different platforms that we have out. And the folks that are here inside of the Zoom. Normally, our Zoom session can handle up to 300 people live in the Zoom with us for a live audience here inside. And then the folks that are watching on all of the different platforms kind of ebbs and flows throughout the time. So we do really appreciate anyone who, if you want to join us here live inside of the Zoom, go on to wavetalkers.com. Down in the footer, there's a link for join us, and you can fill out the form. We send out one email a week, and we give you a little update on all of the information that's going on. You're welcome to join us here live. If you're in the Zoom, hang around for the after party. We will be opening up the mics and taking more questions in that. And if you like the stuff that we're doing, please be sure to go onto our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WaveTalkers. Like and subscribe to the content that's there, especially if you're watching here inside of the Zoom. Don't forget to go onto the YouTube channel and like the sessions on there. It really helps us have our content to be shared across more folks. And if you really do find the information that we're doing really helpful, to then consider going on to wavetalkers.com and clicking on the buy us a coffee link, and that helps support all of the infrastructure that it takes to keep this show up and running and keep us going with this on all of these episodes. We've got a lot of exciting plans coming up for 2023 for a lot of new content. We are planning on still having a show next week and the week after, but then that'll be the last show. We're not going to do a show on Christmas, and we'll I think we're still up in the air as to whether or not we're going to do one on New Year's Day. I think we're going to hold off on a New Year's Day show, but that gives you a sense as to where we're at on the calendar on Wave Talkers. You have all that information. So with that, I will say we'll say 7-3 to all the folks that are joining us on the live stream. We're going to wrap that up. Thanks a lot for all the folks who were joining us on all of those. And we'll see you guys again next week. If you're here inside of the Zoom, hang around for the after party. Thanks a lot, everyone.